Now back to New Hampshire Today with Jack Heath, where the talk is all about New Hampshire. We are your news, traffic, and weather station.
All right, we are back, and I want to thank our next newsmaker, his patience on the Auto Fair listener lines, Mr. Frank Ginta. He's running for the 1st Congressional District seat and race in the Republican side. He's held the seat before, former mayor of Manchester. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I am great, Jack. How are you doing?
Good, thanks. Hey, I want to get right to this because you've served in Congress, and I've talked earlier. We have an illegal immigration crisis. It's not like a situation. This is a crisis. In many, many, many levels, it's a huge crisis. I want to get your take on the more news coming out about people who've crossed the border illegally, and now we're hearing about people that have been transferred to cities and towns across the country, including New England. Is that true?
Well, yes, it is true, Jack. And what we're reading about and hearing about in the news are about 50,000 children who have come across the border. That's a very small portion of the story. The New York Times reported just late last week that almost 300,000 Central American migrants have been detained since April, which includes the more than 50,000 children. And that is because of an executive order issued by the president back in 2012. President Obama issued a memorandum that's enforced by the Department of Homeland Security, which essentially says if you're under the age of 31, but you came to this country before the age of 16, you can stay here for an additional 2 years. It's called DACA. It's the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. Mm-hmm. So that is essentially amnesty for anyone who wants to come into the country that meets that simple age requirement. And it's just been re-upped, Jack, for another 2 years.
Wow.
So that's why you're seeing...
Are we going to get some people transported and held? I mean, I think of like Hanscom, down in Mass, but what about Pease? I mean, are some of these people going to be relocated to New Hampshire locations?
Well, it's very possible because this is all being done through executive order and run by Homeland Security. The legislative body, Congress, has been completely taken out of the ability to make decisions here. So I would remind people that, this is... in my view, the president is just completely ignoring the legislative process. He has said because Congress won't act, I will, and essentially the way he has acted is to allow amnesty into our country. And so far, it's almost 300,000 people, and he's just allowed that executive order for another 2 years.
Right. Now, what are the answers here? First of all, we obviously have a border crisis because the president, when he was talking about, the immigration issue, talked about secure borders. That's the biggest joke of the decade. We don't have secure borders if people are coming over like this, obviously. So that's problem number one. But what are some solutions?
Well, the first solution is a piece of legislation that I voted on when I served in Congress, and I heard from a lot of my constituents on the HALT Act, which essentially states, and it passed the House, and guess what? It didn't go anywhere in the Senate because Harry Reid refused to allow it to come for a vote. But essentially the HALT Act did not allow the administration to issue executive orders on issues like this without the consent or review from Congress. That passed bipartisanly in the House, but didn't go anywhere in the Senate. So, we've tried to take steps to tell the president, look, you've got to go through the legal process and the legislative process through Congress. So if we could get that passed, number one. Number two, I've called on the president to rescind the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, and I'm calling on Carol Shea Porter to call on the president to do the same. Try to deal with this issue in a bipartisan way. There are a whole host of Republicans in the House who are furious with this, who are recognizing the challenge that this is going to present to municipalities and states. And again, Congress has no say. So I would call on her to have the president rescind his own order. That in itself, Jack, can stop the immediate problem. But then we have to go to the longer-term issues, and securing the border should be a no-brainer. I mean, it's essentially enforcing existing laws through Homeland Security, and the president has chosen not to reinforce that existing law, but create a new executive order that is creating more of a problem.
I just got to ask this. I don't get the sense that the White House views this as a huge crisis as much as people in these towns in Murrieta, California, Texas, where they're now worried about, hey, we can't afford, we can't take care of. I mean, come on, these people have entered here illegally. Why is this? Why are they just being put here? So it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I was raised in an era, and I know this is complicated. Rules are rules. There are people that have waited a long time to come into this country. I know there's like 11 million people here illegally. This is now getting to be beyond comical, but I don't sense the White House is viewing this as much a crisis as I might, or someone listening.
No, I don't think they are. Look, they have obviously taken a position that amnesty should be legal, that they're going to do it by executive fiat, executive order. They have done that back in 2012. And they've reissued that order. So what we're seeing now is the result of that direct action.
Let me ask you this, Frank Ginta. Frank Ginta running in the 1st Congressional District. He'll be here July 23rd with at least one, possibly two other challengers in that primary as we have our debate. John DeStace will be joining me. We'll be having all the debates here. But also, let me ask you this, Mr. Ginta. Frank, do you go so far? I don't believe in coincidences. I don't believe all of a sudden tens of thousands of people are trying to come in here, or not trying, they're coming here illegally all at once just because of a certain full moon. And because of that executive order, do you think there was any kind of soft communication to certain outlets or something from the White House to force, is this to force the immigration issue? If Americans see these kids being held in military bases, young kids, that people are going to soften and say, you know what? Just grant amnesty to every illegal here and move forward. Is there some politics involved here, or is it just me?
Jack, there's no coincidence that the president took this executive action, and then all of a sudden we had double the amount of migrants coming over the border in the course of 1 year. So I would like to think better of this administration and those who support this administration, but the facts are the facts. And once you have this order, you have then 290,000 people who have just been detained since April.
So is the White House getting its way? In other words, was this almost an intentional consequence?
It appears that way. They knew that this would happen. They knew that when they granted amnesty for a 2-year period, that there would be a reaction to it. And knowing that, they just re-upped. So I think they're trying to force, amnesty, through executive fiat, and then saying, well, now we need $2 billion to take care of the people that are coming across the border.
So this is somewhat of a manufactured crisis from an executive order.
I think it is, and the reality is what's sad about it is now you have states and municipalities who can't handle this, who want to deal with this in a humanitarian way.
It may be coming our way. It may be coming our way if some of these people are transferred here.
It very well could. And again, Americans want people to come here legally. Americans want people to have a better life. But we just don't want to have it done through amnesty.
I think you and I would agree. If I question our border security, it's not that I'm anti-kids anywhere, but I know there's a lot of kids right here who are here legally who are not getting taken care of. All right, Frank Ginta, thank you very much. We'll let you go. Thanks for being a newsmaker. Thank you. We're going to take a break. News and traffic coming up. Keep here.